Hey everyone, today in this video I wanted to go ahead and cover Monster Hunter Now's latest batch of information where a slew of brand new previews have gone live, also the potential of a closed beta and an open beta taking place later this month and potentially next month is also coming up near the horizon, and also the current closed beta that was available to just about 25,000 or so players has officially closed up. So in this video I want to try to do a little bit of a recap on all of the latest news that we have seen happening for Monster Hunter Now, roughly about the last 2 weeks or so, since plenty of things have been going on. First and foremost, around June 9th, this was around the time of when Summer Game Fest was taking place, Niantic and Capcom decided to host a little bit of an event over at Los Angeles where they basically said that many attendees at the Niantic booth at Summer Game Fest in Los Angeles enjoyed playing Monster Hunter Now for the first time. We look forward to the day where you can play with hunters all over the world together. Now, as far as I can tell, they did not allow much press to be able to capture like video or stuff like that and be able to upload it. I saw a couple of clips on it, like very much blurry camera, shaky camera type stuff, but they weren't actually letting you like directly hook up your phone and capture stuff directly off of it. Still, they're being secretive on what it is that they wish to showcase for this game. So that's kind of been a little bit of an ongoing discussion in and of itself, which I might have to end up tackling on a separate video. Soon after that, about 2 days later or so, they decided to confirm that the closed beta had officially concluded that day. Thank you for those who came hunting and provided plenty of feedback. They will continue to improve the game based on the gameplay experience and input that they received. Stay tuned for the latest update for Monster Hunter Now. So that's pretty much the confirmation that those who did officially receive, and we did end up getting official numbers at the end of the day. Asia received somewhere about 35,000 invitations. North America and Europe received somewhere around 25,000. Originally it was 10,000 closed beta invites, but then it ended up ballooning up to about 15,000 in total. Now again, if you haven't necessarily seen gameplay, it's because Niantic has been very specific about cracking down on gameplay and what it is that people are able to show, which is pretty much nothing. This is why my leaks video hit pretty well, since I was able to cover a lot of the things that other people were not willing to talk about. Link in the description below for that if you missed it, where I spoke about plenty of new details there. Now, since all of this took place about 2 to 3 days ago or so, I also wanted to talk about the fact that there has been plenty of rumors happening about a potential second closed beta happening probably at the back end of June, but that is just rumors, so I don't necessarily have any tangible or confirmation, if you will, tangible evidence or confirmation that that is indeed the case. Most of this stuff is coming from people who claim to know stuff about like Pokemon Go, because they keep hearing information from people from Niantic. This is not necessarily coming from Capcom. Remember, Niantics are the ones working on the game, so if you hear rumors from people, usually you hear from Capcom. That might be one thing, but this is a Niantic dig, so at the end of the day, we don't necessarily know how true that may be. At the end of the day, though, and almost simultaneously, there's been plenty of rumors regarding a potential open beta happening around July as well. But again, as for how true that may end up being, is still up in the air. We were expecting something to happen around the Capcom showcase. This is something that I even spoke in my preview heading into that Capcom showcase, and they indeed ended up showcasing a trailer for Monster Hunter Now, but they didn't really talk about anything there. We expected them to maybe show something, and I think the trailer that they showed for Monster Hunter Now was even before the timer closed down, so it wasn't technically part of the presentation. It was something that they just wanted to throw there at all. There was no Monster Hunter news of any type, something that I had spoken separately on another video on, that they might not necessarily show something, since we're most likely still waiting for that Capcom anniversary presentation for Monster Hunter, which will most likely take place somewhere around September for Tokyo Game Show. So, closed beta happening later this month, potentially somewhere open beta happening maybe late July. That's a possibility as well. That leads us to pretty much the previews that we have been seeing going up. There's been plenty of them. Famitsu put one up. I think Pro Gamer put one up, RPG Site put one up, and Polygon put one up as well. Now, a lot of people are not crazy about Polygon, but at the end of the day, I certainly wanted to touch upon it because they do talk about a couple of things, specifically the mechanics, which is something that previously we had not been able to talk about openly because of just the fact that Niantic was very secretive about all of that. Again, they're not really showcasing long length gameplay up until just recently. So at the end of the day, this Polygon article, huge shout out to Matt Leone. This article was basically, it calls Monster Hunter Now the most traditional Niantic game yet. It mentions that a little over 4 years ago, Niantic reps sat down with Capcom to propose a Monster Hunter game similar to what Niantic had done with Pokemon Go. And they basically link back to their original story, which is something that I might end up covering at a later date. They mentioned that within a few months, Niantic had ramped up hiring for a new created Tokyo studio and built a prototype with monsters laid all over the world map. Over the next 4 years, Niantic chipped away at the idea, built the technologies, and tried some things that didn't work out, like making all combat based around gyroscope controls, and settled on the approach that will feel very similar to Monster Hunter fans. Ahead of Niantic showing the game at this week's Summer Game Fest Plays Days, Polygons participated in a closed beta for the game and spoke to Niantic's John Hanke, the chief product officer Kei Kawai, as well as Capcom Monster Hunter's executive producer Ryosu Sugimoto and Monster Hunter Now's producer Genki Susanoo, to get closer to how the game has come together. In short, the time spent seems to have paid off. Monster Hunter Now feels like the most traditional video game Niantic has ever made, and of course, this being a Niantic game, there are plenty of twists on what traditional means. Like most Niantic games, Monster Hunter Now places you in a real-world map and asks you to explore a fictional universe layered on top. Here's what it means: digging up the resources, finding monsters while exploring swamps, deserts, and forests. The first thing that stands out on how fast and interactive it works. You can spot smaller enemies on the map, tap and zoom in to fight, and take them on with a few quick hits, and zoom back to the map with all about 3 seconds. Bigger monsters come with a more setup and return screen that shows you that you earned what you earned at the end, but those can pass in about 10 to 15 seconds early on. Digging for resources is similarly quick, and the game assigns you a Palico Cat partner who runs around for much of the digging, who does the much of the digging for you. So it's easy to play while walking outside without needing to keep your head buried on your phone. As part of that, there's a nice mix of actively and passive play. You can fight when you have time, but also walk around with your phone in your pocket, and your Palico will chase down resources on its own. The game will tag monsters that you come across for you to fight on later. There's a good balance where the game rewards you for going out whenever you don't open the app. So you also tag large monsters yourself with paintballs to essentially capture them in your phone and add them to a list that you can fight whenever you want, which, apart from being a Monster Hunter throwback, makes a decent thematic connection to Pokemon. The bulk of the game, though, consists on fights against large monsters with combat that feels meaty and substantial. Swipe to move left, right, or in and out. Choose lighter weapons for quick attacks or heavier weapons to charge up for big hits and elaborate animations. Target specific parts of monsters to knock them over. Time dodges perfectly to get stat boosts onto your next swing, and it's simpler than traditional Monster Hunter games, but to be sure, it carries over much of the same feel. Between the time that we would design Pokemon Go, which started back in 2014, I guess, and we started working on this game in 2019, mobile networks got a lot better and a lot more robust. There were a lot more lower latency, so we felt like we could push the envelopes in the terms of fast, high-speed, low-latency combat and multiplayer, said Hanke. One of the game's big twists of Monster Hunter's formula of 75-second timers on fights, designed to make it easier to play with others outdoors. This changes your priorities in battle. When you try to avoid taking, not just because damage that trying to make sure that you don't take damage that you typically take, but because the next time your recovery animation would eat up. According to Kawaii, the team has gone through extensive experiments to nail down the time window and is still open to adjusting it as the team gathers more feedback. We'll see how it goes, he says, and I don't think we'll have more than 20-minute battles, which is, on a mobile phone, remember that those things heat up in your hand relatively fast. A 20-minute battle is something that's just probably not something people are really going to want to do. The speed also ties with how the game's multiplayers work, which is quicker and simpler than something like Pokemon Go. There is no lobby. You just tap on an icon and you're ready to fight monsters, and the game will send you the names of the players nearby who are ready to join. Tap again and all of you head into a fight with up to 4 players all at once. Is noting that early on with the beta, the game isn't especially difficult where you have access to numbers of weapons and you can track down resources, forge new weapons and armors, upgrade your supplies that you have, and use power-ups. You don't need to do any of that. Most enemies will easily fall down as you tap the screen a bunch. Over time, Kawaii says that players will track down more challenging monsters. Apparently 4 to 5 star monsters are more or less impossible for an individual player to take down by themselves. And according to Sugimoto, this is done to help players get accustomed to the game's interface in the beginning stages, but it doesn't last especially long. An important element of the action game is that you learn from your mistakes and you can't take certain monsters, says Sugimoto. You learn whether you made the wrong move, whether you used the wrong weapon, and so on. And when we think that this game has the right progression for players to learn that they need to do in order to defeat these monsters. The beta doesn't allow players to purchase the game's currency, instead doling out a certain amount per day for free, used for items like potions to refill health, well-done steaks to increase your life bar temporarily, and all-wandering Wonder Orb to increase the size of an area where you can find things while exploring. So it's hard to judge how the game will balance difficulty, progression, and monetization at this point. And I think one of the biggest criticisms we have seen so far, especially through several of the previews that I've read already, and some of the, let's say, open opinions that I've seen from people who decided to play the closed beta but decided to actually put their opinions out there, is the fact that the monetization might end up being the sticking point for so many players, because again, free-to-play games need some sort of weird, nasty monetization, especially on mobile devices. And this already has the trappings of something that could just, gradual small boost, which Monster Hunter already lends itself very well to do just that. And potentially just, if you're looking for gacha mechanics and number boosting, man, does monetization just, you eat that up at the end of the day. The last thing that the article mentions is that one of the big questions remaining is how the game will evolve after the early stages. We know that players will be able to forge new weapons and armors and upgrade their gear, and find bigger and more difficult monsters to fight. But I was only able to cover the first hour of the beta for the story, so it's hard to say how different the game will feel as you increase your ranks over time. Remember that I spoke about how your HR dictates how you unlock weapons as well. So we presume that the HR will also decide just how much and which monsters you ultimately are able to engage with at the end of the day. Niantic also says that the game will change quite a bit prior to its official release in September, so we may have additional features added between now and then, like cooking, or maybe not going back. We're not going to talk about it today, says Kawaii with a laugh. With regards to the Palico, obviously, there's lots of opportunities to develop new elements. We're very much excited to explore those, said Susano. Regardless, I'm pretty happy with as the game exists right now. Much like Pokemon, the Monster Hunter license feels like a natural fit for a map-based game, and exploring to find monsters to dig up bones, metals, and crystals, and feels much stronger narratively than, say, walking into plants like Pikmin Bloom or collecting crystals to increase your stamina like NBA World. So pretty much that's what the article mentions. I will say that in my closed beta experience, there were a couple of glitches that I came across, but that's kind of expected. And like I spoke about a couple of minutes ago, the monetization aspects I'm very skeptical on. For me personally, this is something that, I'm not a big mobile gamer at the end of the day. Free-to-play games in general do not appeal to me because of the grimy monetization, and especially games like Monster Hunter, where you can just end up having like perfect armor crafts, and that becomes some sort of like 3%, 5% even with the fact that you need to get the materials, and then you end up saying like, you know, you're trying to get the perfect armor sets, and on top of that there's an even more powerful version of the armor set, and even more powerful version of that decoration that is all RNG based on your crafts. And then on top of that you add potions and, you know, power-ups and powders and things of that nature. It just becomes a slog, and something that players might not want to spend the money on, or might not be willing to. And the second that the game, or mobile games usually don't become profitable, a company dumps them. Remember, this is not the first mobile Monster Hunter game that we have seen. This is probably going to be the more in-depth one that we have seen, one of the ones that they have probably made the most financial push to get made, but not the first, you know, one in this rodeo. So it's something that, you know, it could be leaving people to be a bit skeptical. But that's about all the information that I have for you guys today. A little bit of a recap of what is going on with Monster Hunter Now, as we expect more news to happen relatively soon. If you're brand new to my channel though, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.